Hey you! Yes you! Do you want to learn how to get into the One Piece trading card game? Let me show you how. If you are new to the One Piece trading card game, or any of the other Bandai trading card games, this is going to be for you. This is going to be a very quick rundown on resources that you can use to access data and cards for your decks to be able to play this game that I so dearly love. If you have seen any of my streams very recently, or like even a long time ago, you'll have heard me gush about how good One Piece trading card game is. But that's not it. The Gundam game just came out. That game is awesome. And then the Digimon trading card game is something that a lot of my friends are into casually. And the back and forth in that game is a wonderful experience. But I play One Piece, and I play it pretty competitively. So I wanted to give you some tips and tricks and the resources that I use to access what I need to play the game. What is the first thing that you need to play the trading card game? Cards! Duh. I am going to be using Jewelry Bonnie here as the example, because this is going to be probably the most competitive starter deck that is currently available on the market. You can see here on TCG Player, you can buy this for $9.98 with $4 shipping. That is going to be below MSRP. But if you are able to get it locally, like either at your local game store or at a Walmart, you're going to have it the day of, and all of these come with some little extra freebie in them. So these decks in particular come with, I think, OP10. I think it's a Fist of Divine Speed that this batch of starter decks come with. Some of them come with premium booster packs, like some of the older starter decks. A lot of them just come with whatever, like, when these release, whatever the most recent booster pack is, which is a good thing. It gets you a little extra juice for the starter deck. And if you want to, you can pick up 2 starter decks, and then you'll have a playset of everything in there, and you can play a really competitive version of whatever this leader is right out of the box. Highly recommend it. Even if you don't have that and you just want to try the game out for the first time, picking up one of these for $10 plus shipping, or $15 at like your Walmart or whatever, you can't beat that just to like get started with playing the game. TCG Player is also the best place to buy single cards. This is where I get all of my singles from. I occasionally will pick something really high-end off of eBay, but that's kind of more of an expert thing that you want to be worried about. Don't worry about that right out the gate. If there's a card that you specifically want, first of all, check your local game store. They might have it, and if they do, they might be able to cut you a deal on it. If they don't, go to TCG Player. This place is full of local game stores selling their inventory online, and you'll be able to get it with the TCG Player guarantee. So, like, you won't have any problems, like, if it never arrives, or if it arrives damaged, or something like that. TCG Player will have your back, and you'll be able to get your money back, or get a replacement, or whatever they decide to do. Highly recommend picking up whatever cards you want here. I'm using Kuma as an example, because I will use this later on when I show off what I'm playing in my upcoming Treasure Cup. Now, if you are a little more familiar with the game, and you want to find out what's good and what's being played, do you go to find these things? I have several answers for you. So right here is 3 examples of where I find data for tournament deck lists. This right here is Eggman Events. Eggman is a YouTuber that does a lot of the Bandai card games, a lot of One Piece, and has this whole repository for tournament lists, meta-analysis, structure decks, a deck builder. All of this is available on his website with the most recent data available. Eggman is kind of the most broad database of card data and deck data, just because he takes data from things that aren't just like regionals, large online treasure cups, stuff like that. A lot of this has been taken from like the Bandai Card Fest. There's like some smaller regionals in here. He sometimes takes games or like takes data from like small local, like not small locals, but like larger local events. So a lot of that is going to be available here. Next up is my favorite website. This is Limitless. I've used Limitless for a long time as somebody who has played not only One Piece, but the Pokemon trading card game and VGC for Pokemon as well. Limitless has data for all of that stuff. I'm using this Red Shanks deck list here as an example. One, because I'm going to show this to my brother later so that he can maybe upgrade his Shanks list and get it ready for our Treasure Cup. But to show you that Limitless has a very clean layout and it's very accessible to, as opposed to like Eggman events, where like this is the layout for everything. This is kind of how it all looks. Like it's all laid out entirely visually and not really like there's like this has a visual layout and also a text layout with price data available on the side. Not only that, but you have access to, where the hell is it? Yeah, right up here. There's this little button that Limitless has where you can click to immediately buy the whole deck list if it's something that you really like and you're like, yeah, I'll just play this. I'll just buy the whole thing. Very, very clean, very convenient. I've always really enjoyed Limitless as like a deck repository for higher end events. Not only that, but Limitless, as of recently, they haven't updated anything yet, unfortunately. They keep track of upcoming events as well as recently finished events. They will almost always have a ton of data for recently finished events. You can sign up for like smaller online events through Limitless because a lot of online locals will host their tournaments through Limitless just because the tournament like settings on Limitless are very, very convenient for stuff like that. So if you're looking to play in an online event via webcam or the sim, which we will get to in a little bit, this is where you're looking for. I like Limitless the best, even though it doesn't have everything. It's just the cleanest layout, and it's the most accessible for me. And finally, this is One Piece Top Decks. So this is another repository of data for like the current metagame. So like here we have Fist of Divine Speed plus EBO2, and then like the most recent format, which is Legacy of the Master, right? However, there are older formats on here that they keep track of in case there's like an old deck that you might want to look at. So like they've got Chopper here, and like a couple other things. So like Two Legends was a format that was really fun. That's when I started playing. There were a couple of Marco lists in here that I looked at and then decided like, oh, maybe I should get this updated. So like having this data here is really, really nice and convenient. But what's important for me is they have the Japan and Asia data. So Japan and Asia are slightly ahead of where we are. They're about a set and a half to 2 sets ahead of us, basically at any given time. So if I click on this, this will give me a list of, and it's not all going to be huge events, but it gives me a list of stuff that is happening in the Asian territories with new decks. So there's the Ace and the Roger from the upcoming set OP13 that are getting results. So like this one went 7-0 at this Hanamaru Cup, right? This one went 4-0 at a Hanamaru Cup, a different one apparently. But like these are decks that we don't have yet, so it's nice to be able to look forward into the future and see kind of what people are playing. This is where a lot of people are getting information on what is likely going to be the next big meta deck, which is Emu here. So this is important for looking ahead into the future and seeing like, oh, you know, maybe if I want to play this deck or if I want to play that deck, maybe I pick up some of these cards now or look out for them and then have them available to you when the deck releases. And finally, this is where you can find the One Piece TCG simulator. There's no official client to play One Piece online, unfortunately. It's a little heartbreaking as somebody who wants to play more of this game and just can't a lot of the time because I don't have access to people to play it with all the time. So the One Piece sim is really good. One, for testing with people that are really good, like really wanting to grind out the game. But also, I've used the sim to show the game to my friends, and then they gained an interest in it and started playing it more. So it has kind of everything. Basically, every card that's available is going to be on the sim, whether it's like fully translated or not. We also have access to the separate formats, so you can play the Japan and Asia format, or you can play the current TCG format, right? All of that's available, and it's available for basically every platform. You can even get it on your phone if you're a sicko. With all of the data info out of the way, let's move over to the IRL cam so I can show you what I am going to be playing for the upcoming Treasure Cup at my locals. Hello from the real world. I wanted to show off the deck that I am considering playing for my store's first ever upcoming Treasure Cup. And I wanted to go over my thought process behind why I'm choosing to play Robin instead of anything else. There's a couple reasons why I'm going with Robin over some of the other leaders that I have access to. I have a full Blackbeard list that I could play, Shanks that I could play, you know, Zoro, Bonnie, Blue-Yellow Nami is actually in contention for second if I don't end up playing Robin, just because Kuma is disgusting right now, and that deck has a lot of good access to the 7 Warlords package. But the reason I'm playing Robin is twofold. One, purple and yellow individually right now are very, very strong. Obviously, green is kind of everywhere in the format thanks to Zoro, but the individual cards in purple and in yellow are soaring so far above where green is, minus Cavendish, really, that I felt combining these two would be kind of my best bet in playing just like a very good, strong deck. The second reason is, again, other than the fact that Robin is my beautiful darling wife and I love her dearly, is this deck in particular can kind of shift its game plan on a dime. This is what most people would describe as a ramp mid-range deck. So if you are playing against control, you are on the aggro end. So you want to be pressuring your opponent and forcing them to take actions that will likely end up favoring you in the long run because of the amount of pressure that you can put on. If your opponent is more aggressive, you are going to be on the control end. So you want to use Robin's ability here to ramp every turn, protect her with some of the cards in this deck, and eventually grind your opponent into nothing. You eventually want to just, like, hold on long enough against some of the decks like Yamato, Zoro, Shanks, Rayleigh. Hold off long enough to remove all of their threats, and then you can take over the game at the end. I'll go over my deck building process real quick, just because Robin is a leader that not many people see, and it's going to have some cards that you probably won't have considered for this deck in particular. I'm going to start with the events. So I am on 5 events total. I used to be on a 3-2 split of You Should Disappear and Gum Gum Giant. However, in the testing that I've done recently, I've noticed that I don't often have the additional single Dawn available to play Gum Gum Giant. So while this card in a vacuum is actually much stronger than You're the One Who Should Disappear, I don't often have this single resource available to me because I'm using them to build to the board and protect the leader here, right? So You're the One Who Should Disappear ends up being a bit of a more flexible option. Plus, the trigger here is very relevant. Robin requires triggers to be discarded to activate her ramp ability. So having the additional trigger on an event is huge. And You're the One Who Should Disappear's event trigger is crazy. If you're at 0 life cards, you add a card from the top of your deck to the top of your life cards, then you trash 1 card from your hand. If you're empty-handed, this doesn't end up mattering, but even if you are, you're already willing to throw stuff away to get resources out onto the board, and effectively, that card is going to end up in your hand eventually. It's going to fade an attack, and it's going to end up in your hand anyway, so discarding a card is very negligible a lot of the time. I will go down the curve here. I am on a single set of ones. I'm on the Nico Olivia's. This is just your 2K counter. The on-play rarely comes up. I've used this out of, like, I don't know, 100 games. Maybe twice to get in an attack with Robin, but like the on-play ability rarely ever matters. I use the trigger pretty often just to like filter cards out of my hand that I don't need. I have quite a few threes in here. I have a set of Capone, and I have a set of Jaguar de Sol. So Capone here is just a 2K counter with a trigger, which is basically all you really want. The trigger comes up quite a bit. It lets you stall out the game for a little longer. A lot of characters in this format, like Yamato, there's that new 9-drop Whitebeard that a lot of people at my locals have been playing because it's one of the starter decks. That has double attack. It's like, that is not irrelevant. That can come up. So fading one attack on something like that is going to be very powerful. And then Sol again is just a blocker, and then if you have trigger, you just get to play it for free. One of the better cards in this deck, just because, like, if it's in your hand, that's fine, you can play it as a 3-cost blocker. If it's in your life pile, that's even better because it's a card that you're going to generate for free. Then I have the 4s. This has been the hardest part of this deck to kind of solidify, just because there's a lot of flexibility here. I went with this package. I'm on 2 Kikunojo, I'm on 3 Basil Hawkins, and I'm on 4 Frankie. Frankie is the more important one here, because if you get this as a late life card, so if you have 1 or less life cards and you trigger this, you draw a card and then you play Frankie, so you get a 5k body out for free. You can start removing your opponent's units. But it's the only one of these that's a 2k counter. So that's why I'm playing 4 Frankie. These two, on the other hand, are a little bit different. So they both have on KO effects. Hawkins' trigger ability is draw 2 and trash 1, which is pretty good. Kiku's is if your opponent has 3 or less life cards, play this. You're going to be burning your opponent's life cards away pretty frequently between Robin's Vanish effect and some other cards we'll get to a little bit later. So like that comes up quite a bit. Really the biggest difference between playing 3 Hawkins and 2 Kiku, or 3 Kiku and 2 Hawkins, is that Hawkins is a counter. That's basically why. Otherwise, Kiku is a lot stronger. It's got a bigger body, and the on KO effect often comes up a little bit more than Hawkins, just because, like, while Hawkins trashes up to 1 card from the top of your opponent's life cards on KO, that's good. If your opponent has 3 or less life cards, you getting a life card back is so much more important to this deck, because this deck wants to run longer than others and has a tough time against some of the aggro decks. So generating that extra life is pretty important. I will move on to the 5s real quick. So I've got 3 of the 5-cost Luffy and 4 Nami. So Luffy's ability to remove a unit actually has come up for me quite a bit. Just being able to take out, like, there's a lot of 4-cost units nowadays that, that have enough power to be able to force you to counter an attack. So being able to get rid of one of those is very relevant. And then the trigger is just a better version of that, because it's like you get to effectively do it for free. Nami, on the other hand, is just kind of crazy. So on play, you can trash 1 card with a trigger from your hand. KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. Then if you have 3 or less life cards in your hand, sorry, 3 or less cards in your hand, draw 1. And then the trigger is you just get to do the on-play effect. So, having this available on an on-play ability, or being able to use that ability with the trigger comes up so frequently. Oftentimes, I have just discarded Namis to Robin's effect. I very rarely actually just run Nami out over Luffy, but I like having the ability to activate the trigger ability more than I like being able to activate Luffy's trigger ability. So that's why I'm on a 4-3 ratio like that. Next is one of the cards I very recently added to the deck. 6-drop Luffy, and then an all-star in the deck, your 6-drop Robin. So this right here is why I am not playing Bartholomew Kuma. I have a playset of Kumas. They're in my Nami deck. But I am not playing them for a couple of reasons. One, the 6-drop slot, once you get higher up on the curve, even though this is a purple ramp deck, you do want to be efficient with your resources. And having 8 6s is already a lot. And I have come to the conclusion that these 2 6s are more important to this deck than it would be to play Bartholomew Kuma. So I will start with Robin. Robin, just on play, if your opponent has 3 or more life cards, you burn one of their life cards. That's what this deck wants to do, and it's a 6-drop, 6k body. You're never gonna say no to that. It's also a 1k counter, which isn't irrelevant. And then the trigger ability, play up to 1 yellow character with a cost of 3 or less from your hand. That trigger I rarely activate just because, if I'm doing that, my target has to be Saul, and if I'm using the trigger ability of this Robin, I'm already in a pretty bad spot. This is here for the on-play ability and to be able to discard to your leader. This Luffy, on the other hand, I added very recently. I just recently started testing with this card. This has been the best inclusion that I have made to the deck, and it is not close. So, on play, and when attacking, Dawn -2. If your leader is multicolored, and your opponent has 5 or more Dawn cards on their field, your Straw Hat Crew type leader's base power becomes 7,000 until the end of your opponent's next end phase. Being able to take Robin from a base 5,000 to a base 7,000 on both players' turn, every turn, is so hard to chew through. Not only does Robin do better on offense when Luffy is on the board and active and being able to trigger this every turn, having that extra 2k is really, really disruptive on defense. It's effectively like having a free 2k counter every turn. This card is nuts. I think because it is not a card with a trigger, I have considered cutting it to 3, but I would not cut it below that. This card is so cracked, and it is often a target for removal just because this ability is disgusting with Robin. Next, I will move. We're going to go just up the curve a little bit. I have 3 Sanjis at 7. I prefer this Sanji over the 7-drop Sanji, effectively because it's removal. Again, it's a 1k counter, which isn't irrelevant, but on play, you can return 1 or more Dawn from your field to your Dawn deck. This character gains Rush during this turn, then rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 6 or less. There have been a lot of blockers that I have run into, and this effectively just says, alright, rest your opponent's blocker, and then kill it. I don't have anything else to say over this. I was on the yellow 7-drop NL before this, but this card is, it costs you a Dawn, but who cares, you're in purple. It is effectively just a better NL. Next, this is kind of the all-star of the deck for Captain Kid. Just on play, rest this character, trash up to 1 card from the top of your opponent's life cards. this does exactly what you want. Like, this is 8 Dawn for a 9k body that burns your opponent's life away. That's exactly what you want. And then, if they have 2 or less life, you get to filter a card every turn. This is kind of like an immediate, like, they need to kill this. Because if you're filtering cards every turn, it is more and more likely that you see your important bombs, or, on defense, one of your events. So this is a big enough threat that they will likely want to deal with this. And it's why this is the only 4 of at the top end. Finally, I have 2 9-drop Yamato and 2 10-drop Ace. So Yamato, I for a while tested the 9-drop Linlin in this slot, and Linlin is too resource intensive. It effectively does the same thing as Yamato, or it hits the board, is a 9k body that gains you a life. Linlin's removal is better than Yamato's, but if you're worried about removal in your 9-drop slot, in this deck, you are probably already losing. Like, you've constructed your deck wrong, effectively. And that's the conclusion that I came to, because it was too Dawn intensive, and the minus Dawn to activate the unplayability just wasn't worth it. So Yamato just being like, hey, gain a life when I hit the board. It doesn't cost you a Dawn. And then also, sometimes you get to remove a cheap blocker, which is good. And then Ace is kind of like, this is just your best top end. Because you're not super heavy on ramp and you're spending cards every turn to do it, I've considered playing like the 10-drop Luffy in this slot, but this just is a 10k body that gains you a life when it hits the board, and is able to effectively immediately remove a threat, because by the time that you're getting to 10 with this Ace, you are probably at a very low life total. And that's this deck. Again, I love this deck. I've been playing it for a long time. I've been testing it for a long time. It's not meta. I would consider this probably like an anti-meta deck. There's a lot of Zoro in my meta, and this deck is pretty good at fighting that. I will have to find a way to beat my brother's Shanks list, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I'd like to thank you all for listening to me rant for like what is probably over 20 minutes at the end of this, when I am done like figuring out where all the footage is with all of this. As somebody who has been playing card games basically my entire life, I started with Yu-Gi-Oh when I was little, got into Magic as a teenager, and I've been playing even more and more and more as an adult. This is kind of just where I live. This is kind of where I feel the most at home, being able to sit at a table and play a fun game of cards with a friend or two. I love and live for this stuff. This is kind of my bread and butter. I don't do it as often for content, just because it's my most important hobby to me, and I don't really feel like that would translate well, like my enthusiasm would translate well into just sitting around and playing cards for 2 hours or whatever. But I love what I do, and I love being able to share that with other people. So having an outlet like this, where I can give all this information to a large audience of people, means a lot to me, and I hope you got something out of it. Thank you for listening to a bimbo rant for 25 minutes about cardboard. If you guys like my content, you might see more One Piece or card game stuff in the future. I don't know. There will probably be more, but I can't promise anything anytime soon. Please like, subscribe. Apparently there's a hype feature. I don't know if I have access to it, but if you could do that, that'd be neat. Try that. Give that a shot. That'd be fun. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, everybody.